What was the voter turnout percentage across the 12 wards during the by-elections?
Well, we had a total of about 12 wards, as far as this election is concerned, from Bodija to UI to Gate to Yemitu, Oja, and several other areas in Ibadan as far as the by-elections for the federal Ibadan North Federal Constituency is concerned. Well, you might say out of the 100%, maybe 20 to 30%, because in some of the wards and polling units, there were quite a few number of persons you could find, just a cluster of pockets of persons, hanging around. And where you probably think that you had enough for a lot of voters, you find out that they are mostly party agents and a few agents and all of that. But sometime around 11, 12 p.m., the numbers seem to have increased. So when you mean increase, you look at, for instance, in a polling unit that has about 1,000 registered voters, and they have about 108 voting. I don't know whether to call that an improvement or otherwise, but that's the reality. And in some polling units where you had about 960-something registered voters, you had just about 16 persons who actually came out to vote. And that's not the kind of turnout we had hoped for. That's not the kind of election we had hoped for. Well, it's easy for us to judge, to say, okay, this is just a by-election, for crying out loud. Maybe because it's not governorship, maybe because it's not presidential and all of that. But that has always been a norm when it comes to elections across the length and breadth of Nigeria. So Ibadan is not an exception. But again, you need to know that the election has officially ended now. It's a few minutes past 3. The election ended officially at 2:30, except in some areas where maybe they had queues and they have to keep attending to them. And of course, sorting and counting has started already. In the next few minutes, or maybe in an hour time, we all will be headed to the collation center, where all results from all the wards, all the polling units will be brought in for the official counting, and subsequently the winner announced.
So how does this turn out? How does this turnout compare to previous elections in the area? How was it?
Well, we did coincidentally ask the same question, but some persons will say that maybe those that didn't come out were actually scared because of, previous features of the election they've also faced in terms of violence and all of that. But, the good thing is there was no sort of electoral violence or any skirmishes of any kind. In fact, a lot of them said that it's one of the most peaceful and the most free and fairest election they've witnessed in recent time. But that did not even encourage voters who had come out for whatever reasons best known to them. But all in all, you could say rightly that the election has been one of the very best, basically. It doesn't matter whether it's by elections, but for the fact that we had a very transparent election, I mean, you needed to see the counting and the sorting, you needed to see the beavers, all the machines were all working, they were all perfect, so there was no really any cause to raise questions, or there were no issues, or any incidents where people begin to doubt the credibility of the election itself. So majority of the voters that we spoke to made it clear that this was actually one of the best they've seen, even though they didn't really have enough of their electorates come out to exercise the franchise. But this is the way to go. Basically, if you ask me, this is the way to go. Whether or not people turn out in the election or during the election is a different kettle of fish. For the fact that we had a very peaceful election, is something that is really credible. And all kudos to the INEC and every other stakeholder involved in this election here.
Victor, were there any logistical challenges reported during the by-elections, such as delays in opening the polling units or shortages of election materials?
Well, if there has to be any of such issues, that should be on the part of the electorate, because all the officials we met were right on time at their polling units. The official time to begin the process was at 8:30, and within 8:30 and 9 a.m. they were all, there seated holidaying, if you like, waiting for lecturers to come out. While some were just busy pressing their phone just while they were pending the time the lecturers will come out to do their thing. Some other persons were lucky to have a few persons, engaging them in the electoral process. So you could say that for everything that requires an election to happen or to go smoothly, it indeed happened. There was no cause for alarm, there was no issue, no incidences at all, except for the fact that the people who were supposed to come out to do what they were meant to do in their numbers basically didn't turn out as much as we would expect. So in all, you could say just about 30% of the electorate came out in their numbers to vote, while the rest probably stayed back in the houses or, went about their businesses, as the case may be. And do not forget, I said earlier that we also noticed that the restriction of movement, imposed by the government in some areas in Ibadan North were actually not followed, because we noticed a lot of bikes, men doing their business, taxi drivers, and market sellers, of course, going about their business, although maybe not in their numbers, but you expect that these people should have obeyed that order and probably come out to vote. But I guess they were more interested in carrying out their businesses, because basically, in terms of the population who actually come out to vote in every election, they're all made up of people who work in the informal sector. So you understand why they really want to focus on their business than come out to vote. But that's the reality. But all in all, you could say indeed it was an interesting election that had no cause to worry or no cause to raise questions about the credibility, like I said, about the election.
So you would agree, based on what you've said, that the electoral officers and security personnel deployed across the wards were effective today? Absolutely. Maybe they didn't have much to do because, of course, they were just idling away. In some police centers, you had more than enough police officers and NSCDC and some local security outfits, just hanging around to ensure that the entire process did not have any skirmishes of any kind. They didn't have much to do. They were just watching and just, smiling all around and making friends. And if there's a case where they have to do their business, of course, they will do it. But there was no such incidences that requires, their swift action or whatsoever that you might be thinking. Thank you so much, Victor, for joining us this afternoon.